a collaborative space that everyone is actually welcome to have conversations over what problems can be solved and what technologies can actually be leveraged. The last thing that we've done that I think PS mentioned, and it was very important, is that data is missing. So you have conversations with governance, people at the governance level, and they cannot make decision because they don't know. So there's what you hear from the media, but then you're not sure how many people are actually affected by a certain problem. So we set out also with the Office of the Cabinet Affairs to make sure that we are able to design a platform that everyone can report on the things they do, and then translate that into what does it mean. So for example, if we have a problem right now with scarcity of food, living conditions, it's very expensive right now, all those things, they're able to be translated into a question of what does it mean for a citizen by saying that you've actually improved their livelihoods. So the fluency element is what the lab now brings in through this aggregation of all these data points and the compute power that we provided by the corporate space. But it's a long story. Thank you. For today, I think that's enough.
No, that's amazing. And of course, like I said, you sit in a very interesting space where you have to oscillate between the two and make sense of it, but also provide very practical solutions. So talking about solutions, Joshua Mbai, the Great Green Wall, among many objectives, monitors funding and flow needs when it comes to financing climate change. You know, and having had that discussion in terms of the sources of data, the infrastructure, the computing power, how does that support you? And how does that support your work in terms of climate action? Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. PS, Dr. Claire. My name is Joshua Mbai. I work for Development Gateway. In this line, I'm realizing that Development Gateway is probably the only non-governmental organization, and which is not a private business. DG was established by the World Bank about 20 years ago, incubated by the World Bank, and then became independent to support governments, providing advice and support in terms of data, the digital process, and that. The main project that we're working on, which is most relevant here, amongst others, is the Great Green Wall. Probably I can take a minute to explain Great Green Wall so that everybody understands. So over time, everybody realized that the Sahara Desert was growing. It was extending towards the equatorial area of Africa, and every year, millions and thousands of acres of land were being converted into deserts. And therefore, the UN, through UNCCD, and the Africa Union came up with a project to stop the desert from coming down. And the only way was building a wall between the desert and the equatorial area, a wall of trees. That's why it's called the Great Green Wall. It stretches from Eritrea, Djibouti, into Mauritania, on the other side of Africa. Development Gateway is working with UNCCD and the Pan-African Agency for the GGW, which is Great Green Wall, to build a system that collects data on three main areas. The first area is on the financing. We currently have billions of dollars that have been committed to that project across 11 countries, Djibouti, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Sudan, Nigeria, Niger, Chad, Senegal, Mauritania, Mali, and Burkina Faso. And we're building a system together with 11 countries, first to track the financial commitments that have been made towards that work, but secondly to also track the impact of the finances that have been deployed in these countries in terms of how many acres of land have actually been restored from being a desert to productive farmlands, how many jobs have been created in the process, which is the impact to the community, how many people have been trained on aspects of climate mitigation, the adaptation process, and also how many tons of carbon dioxide have been sequestered back into the ground. So this system, as we do it, we're currently almost finalizing. All the work that has been mentioned here comes in to support the work we're doing, because we have to work with the communities in terms of collecting the data, but we also have to use very sophisticated tools to analyze the data and make it usable for governments, for communities, for actors in that particular space. So we are collecting the data very manually, because dealing with 11 countries with very different settings is very difficult. So we have to collect this data through some standardized indicators that were developed by UNCCD and the Pan-African Agency for the GGW. But after that, once we build this data into the system, we will be building lots of mapping capabilities, getting live feed from satellites, so that, because we just don't want to track how many trees have been planted, we actually want to track over years and see as the desert retreats by seeing the greening of the environment and as that changes. The opportunities that are there are opportunities around partnerships. We really have to build partnerships, because when you look at the work that needs to be done, and this time I'm talking about, I would want to a little bit get myself off Kenyan context and place myself in the African context and say the work that needs to be done from an African perspective is really huge. Putting together all these data systems across different countries, building the indicators and agreeing on how that should be tracked, and making sure that the learning and the knowledge that is collected can be scaled across countries.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jared. I'd like you to pause there, because as you talk about scaling from Kenya, and we've seen how Kenya is demonstrating in real time the power of these partnerships when it comes to data, the infrastructure, all coming together. Jeff, before I come to you, Karen, maybe you could just talk about the vision of the United AI Alliance in terms of, we are doing this in Kenya, and there's an opportunity to scale based on the learning that's coming out of here, Kenya playing a more regional role, obviously, and then the ambition to set up similar and support similar infrastructure across the region in Africa.
I think that's a great question, and it was really fascinating listening to everybody here. So I want to answer the question and talk a little bit about the United AI Alliance and what it is. But before I do that, I think it's important that I just unpack a little bit more about NVIDIA, who we are, our background, who I am, and how this United AI Alliance came to fruition through these partnerships, and where we're at today and where we want to go. Because there's an important ask for help, and it really comes down to partnership and working with people face to face, right? We're all real people that have to work together, and it's all based on trust, that what we've built today. So again, I'm with NVIDIA. I kind of give a little bit of a background, but just maybe some highlights that are fascinating to me. Oh, sure. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to go fast and behind the glass. So just a couple of highlights on NVIDIA, right? So we are now maybe the 4th or 5th most valuable traded company in the world. And that happened because of ChatGPT, but a few other things people saw coming, right? We're worth, last time I checked, $1.2 trillion, right? So you have Apple, you have Microsoft, you have Amazon, and then maybe it could be Tesla or something. And then there's NVIDIA. And it's remarkable because we're a small company. People think, oh, NVIDIA, they see our market cap, they think you're a huge company. We're not. We're 950 as far as employee count. We're somewhere maybe 150 as far as revenue we do, but people have evaluated us so high because of the future of what AI is bringing. And everyone raised their hand when they saw ChatGPT. That's generative AI. Generative AI is a very, very powerful thing. That's with a large language model, but there's so many more things you can apply it to. You can apply generative AI to what's happening with counting trees, with monitoring the forest. More importantly, it's something we call digital twins, which is a virtual world. Right now, if you look at like a BMW or Mercedes, they don't build a factory from scratch. What they do is they build it in a digital twin. They build a virtual world, and they may build 1 million models, and they program all the robotics in this world, and then it goes into the real world when everything is just so. That's something that we're bringing with these stations, the ability to make digital twins. One of our dreams is to create a digital twin of a section of Nairobi and understand surface water, groundwater management. How do we engineer solutions that are more scalable? How do we create startups that can use this equipment, work with these partners, work in the lab that maybe, hey, we understand the infrastructure. When the water comes, maybe it's $100 million to solve it. But thanks to additive manufacturing, generative AI, this partnership, maybe we find a way to do this problem for $1 million. Now we can actually build it because we found a way to use a new solution, new materials, new methodologies, robotics, in the loop, working with man. And we do that all right here in Kenya. It's remarkable. I'm a volunteer here, right? I didn't come, this isn't a charter from our company. There's a lot of people in our company that love what we're doing, but I need help because I want the CEO of my company, the CEO of many companies, to see what we're doing. So we're working, actually, I had products to bring to corporations to get them on our platform for data science. And we made a decision to say, well, let's take 10%, out of 100 systems, let's take 10 of those systems and let's sprinkle them around to emerging markets. Something that no one expected, right? We're expected, how do you get General Electric? How do you get Boeing? How do you get these large companies on our platform? Well, we said, well, how do you get people who don't have access to our platform on our platform? And that's where I met Kate Callis. She joined our company, and she introduced me to Victor at GPSTD, and soon enough with Davis. And we had this idea. We provided systems across NSO, National Statistical Offices throughout Africa. And we have some really amazing stories. You'll have to track that down later. But what happened is, we brought in GPSD, Hewlett-Packard came on board, Amazon came on board. And frankly, we have so many companies where it's kind of grassroots inside of all these Silicon Valley companies, just through friends that we know, this partnership, right? People we know, real relationships. We were able to get another $100,000 of these computers to come from HP. They paid for them in full. They paid for all the taxes, all the overhead, and they want to bring more. And what's really exciting is we get to now see what these people here in Kenya will do with the systems. We get to document it, and we get to work with the partnership. We get to work with Davis and Claire to expand our partnership, to tell our narrative, to show the capabilities here in Africa, here in East Africa, specifically Nairobi, what is capable of happening on the ground when you bring the right equipment to the right people. And that's where we need help. We have brought the equipment. We have people to help our DLI, to help developers learn our platform. We want to see everyone succeed. We want to see 15 billion trees, 20 billion trees grow and prosper. We want Kenya to show the world how it's done when you adapt to climate. And that's something I'm passionate about. I know there's people passionate all around the world. And with the help we need is getting the word out. Let people know what's happening here, what's happening in this lab. It's very, very important. Because what's starting here, my vision, Davis's vision, the partner's vision, is to see it scale, not across Africa, but over the world, around the belt of the world. We're all in it together. Everyone deals with water problems. Everyone's dealing with floods, droughts, famine, fire, pestilence. We have tools now to solve these in ways that we've never been able to think of. And frankly, we don't have to because we have generative AI. We can write an algorithm that can find the solution for us. And you just have to be a person that knows how to use generative AI to find that solution. And that's what we'll see coming over the next year. And I'm excited to see it happen. So thank you so much.
Round of applause for the gentleman before I'm accused of being biased. Something much better than that, please. Now, Karen, as the global partnership, we look at this holistically. We have accountable data governance as one of our core pillars, and it looks at the totality of data values and issues, emerging issues around AI and the concerns that citizens have. But we also think about inclusivity through our inclusive data pillar. And so maybe you can just, having heard everyone talk, what does inclusivity, equity actually mean? Where do data values come into this conversation, and why is that so important?
Thank you, Davis, and greetings to everyone, all protocols observed. I think as we have this conversation, let's remember data is not something you do at people, it's something you do with people. So that should recenter us. And I think in this conversation on technology, digitization, and data, there are two broad areas that I see. One is the institutional systems or the mechanisms to ensure that the innovation, the technology, the data that we are producing or that we're using to tackle climate change, but to tackle all the other problems we have in this world are functioning. So what do I mean by institutional mechanisms? And I'll, of course, start with the legal systems, the institutional systems, but there's more. And I think the climate change space is one sector, if I call it, one sector that is hungry for real-time information or timely data. Because as one of the speakers mentioned, you know, you can't rely on the trees that we counted 10 years ago. Things change so fast, so rapidly, that if you're not, you know, thinking on your feet and moving quickly and having data systems that are timely, then you'll miss the point and you'll actually lose people instead of saving people. So in addition to those institutional mechanisms, you're also thinking about access. You know, should we be buying data for decisions about real people? So it's, you know, increasing access. Where you need to buy it, is it affordable? Is it affordable to government, affordable to decision makers, so that they can make the right decisions? And it's available, of course, it's accountable. You know, what's the point of collecting all this data if we're not going to use it? So it's accountable and it's actually put to good use and put to the right use. Of course, in this conversation on climate, we've been hearing a lot about financing. So it has to be well financed, and it's around having access to data on financing, but also financing for data. So those two are really important. And of course, well governed, the institutional mechanisms for governing the data, governing the technology, but also having participatory process so that citizens can really understand what's the innovation, how does it matter to me, and you know, what do I need to do as an ordinary citizen, and how does it change my life? And it's sort of taking me back to my first statement, data is not something you do at people, it's something you do with people. And then the second bucket or the second pillar is the process. So how do you ensure that the processes of data, of digitization, of innovation is inclusive, it's equitable? And there's some really good practices out there around ensuring that the data is representative. You know, it's speaking to the voices of the people. It's thinking about what do the youth want? What do women want? What do old people want? What do people in the continent of Africa or Latin America want? So it's really ensuring that those initiatives are representative and are co-created with the affected communities. I think the speaker from IBM talked about democratizing data, and I think with the private sector playing a very huge role in the digital space, I think it's sort of broken the walls around who collects data, who owns data. And I think I'd take it a notch higher and democratize data so that citizens, ordinary citizens, have the power to collect data on the issues that they care about, and they feel that, you know, they are within their right to actually collect that information because they care about that issue. So it's taking democratization even much further to an ordinary citizen or an ordinary person who lives in the village and cares about these issues or cares about, you know, their farms no longer being so productive as before, and seeing that as an opportunity to collect data, to collect information, and taking the change in their own hands.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Karen. Round of applause. PS